Okay, so what if I told you that you aren't a thing? That you're not some static object, but actually a continuous act of creating yourself? That's the wild central idea of a philosopher who, get this, basically became famous by accident. His life was just a whirlwind of controversy. So let's dive right into the brilliant and kind of crazy world of Johann Gottlieb Fichte.
So where does a story like this even begin? Well, it starts with a massive case of mistaken identity. A mistake that, honestly, changed everything for him.
All right, to get why this was such a big deal, you have to understand, Immanuel Kant, he was like the absolute titan of German philosophy at the time, a total rock star. So when a new book from him dropped, it was a massive event. And this one? Attempt at a critique of all revelation. Everyone was hailing it as another masterpiece from the great man himself.
There was just one tiny problem. It wasn't by Kant. At all. See, because of a printing error, the book came out completely anonymously. And when the real author was revealed, well, let's just say the entire philosophical world was stunned.
So who was this mystery writer? It was this guy, a totally unknown and pretty poor tutor named Johann Gottlieb Fichte. Turns out he'd shown the manuscript to Kant, and Kant was so blown away he helped get it published. Just like that, this one single mistake, this accident, it catapulted Fichte from complete obscurity into instant philosophical fame. I mean, he was literally mistaken for a genius. The pressure was on, right? Now he had to prove he deserved the title.
Okay, so Fichte has the spotlight now. And what does he do with it? He decides to take on the biggest, thorniest philosophical problem of the day. A problem that he got straight from Kant.
And here's the question that just haunted him, and really it should haunt us too. How can we be truly free in a world that seems to be totally governed by scientific laws? You know, cause and effect. Are we just cogs in a machine, or do we have genuine freedom? For Fichte, this wasn't just some academic puzzle. He believed philosophy had to have an answer, and there was absolutely no middle ground.
And in his mind, you had to make a choice. There was no hedging your bets. You had to plant your flag on one side or the other, because your starting point, well, that determined everything else.
So Fichte lays out these two fundamental paths. First up, you've got idealism. This path starts with the I, with you. Your consciousness, your freedom, that's what's real and primary. The outside world of things, we have to explain that based on our freedom. Then there's the other path, dogmatism. This one starts with the thing, with the objective material world, all governed by strict laws of necessity. And if you start there, well, that feeling of freedom you have, that's just an illusion that your philosophy has to explain away.
And this is so important. For Fichte, this wasn't just some abstract choice. It was personal. As he famously said, the kind of philosophy one chooses depends upon the kind of person one is. Basically, if you're a person who is fundamentally about freedom, you're going to choose a philosophy that puts freedom first. It's almost a moral imperative.
So Fichte plants his flag firmly on the side of idealism. And from there, he builds this incredibly radical system to show exactly how freedom is the engine that creates our reality.
He calls his system the Wissenschaftslehre. Now, that translates to doctrine of science, which, talk about ambitious, right? He wasn't just adding to the conversation. He was trying to build a whole new foundation for all human knowledge. And he wanted to build it on one single powerful idea, the free, active self.
And at the absolute core of this whole thing is a concept he calls the Tathandlung. Okay, stick with me here, because it's a little tricky, but it's brilliant. He's saying the I, yourself, your consciousness, it's not a noun, it's not a static thing, it's a verb. It's a constant doing, an act of self-creation. Think about it, it's a fact act. You are simultaneously the action of making yourself and the product of that action. It's a process, not an object. So, how does this engine of consciousness actually work? Well, Fichte breaks it down into a few steps. First, the I posits itself. It just asserts its own existence. It's this infinite, striving force. But then, step 2, it immediately bumps up against a check, or what he calls an Anstoß. It hits a limit, and in that moment, it realizes it's not infinite, it's finite. Step 3, to even understand this limit,
The I has to posit it as something separate, as the not I. And that's the objective world. And this sets up step 4, a constant back and forth. The I is now endlessly striving to overcome this not I, to push against its limits, and in that very struggle, it shapes both the world and itself.
And this is a really crucial point. Fichte is not saying we're some kind of gods creating reality from thin air. It's actually the opposite. Your freedom isn't this absolute, unlimited thing. It only becomes real, it only even exists in the struggle against limitations. Freedom is the struggle. It's the striving.
But then Fichte adds another layer, and this was truly groundbreaking. He says this self-creating I, it can't even do it alone. It can't become self-aware in a vacuum. To become an individual, you have to be summoned, as he puts it, by another free person. Your self-consciousness actually depends on you recognizing other free beings and on them recognizing you. We literally need other people to become who we are.
So, as you can probably guess, these kinds of radical ideas, they didn't go over well with everyone, not by a long shot. Fichte's career was just dogged by controversy, and his legacy, it's still something people argue fiercely about even today.
Yeah, you just knew these ideas were going to cause a stir. And in 1798, boy did they. A massive public firestorm erupted, a scandal that became known as the atheism controversy, and it totally defined his career.
And it all kicked off because of an essay he wrote. In it, he basically argued that God isn't some separate personal being out there. Instead, he claimed that God is the moral order of the universe itself. The divine law and the moral law, they're one and the same. Well, the backlash was immediate and just brutal. Someone published an anonymous pamphlet calling him an atheist. The whole thing just exploded. You had powerful German princes threatening to forbid their students from going to his university. Fichte, to be honest, didn't handle the crisis very well, and by 1799, he was forced out of his professorship at Jena. He literally had to flee to Berlin.
And this whole scandal is a big part of why his legacy is so complicated. I mean, people see him in completely different ways. For some philosophers, like Hegel, who came after him, he was just a subjective idealist, a necessary but incomplete step in the story. For others, he's the ultimate philosopher of freedom. But then there's that third, much more controversial label.
This is where that core idea of a striving, self-creating self takes a sharp and very political turn. Later in his life, in 1808, Napoleon's troops were occupying Berlin, and Fichte delivers these famous speeches, the addresses to the German nation. And in them, he basically takes his philosophy about the individual's struggle for self-realization and applies it to the entire German people as a collective. This earned him what's been called the dubious honor of being one of the founding fathers of German nationalism, and that has forever complicated his legacy as a philosopher of universal human freedom.
Which brings us right back to the central, nagging question. Fichte, the man who literally invented himself, who rose from total obscurity, he was convinced he had built a system of human freedom. But did he? Is a philosophy that's all about a constant, defiant struggle against limits, is that ultimately a tool for liberation for everyone? Or can that same exact energy be twisted, be channeled into something much darker? That's the powerful and frankly unsettling question that Fichte's life and work leaves us with.